So Candace, you mentioned emotional regulation and distress tolerance. What does that even mean? You didn't even explain that. How does that even tie into capitalism and just calming down and your woo-woo stuff on Sunday and your sound bowls? What does that even have to do with anything? Welcome to Healing Not Healed, where we will talk about all things mental health and holistic wellness in a very transparent and culturally competent space. So, healing fam, I know I talked about emotional regulation and distress tolerance in the last video, and you're probably like, what does that even mean? And why is it important? And in what way and shape or form is it going to help my mental health with everything else going on in the world? Emotional regulation, also known as self-regulation, is the ability to manage and control your own emotions in a very healthy and productive way. It's how you respond to your emotions instead of reacting to them. And a lot of the times when we react from our emotions, we are reacting impulsively. So emotional regulation is being able to observe, notice, and even communicate what those emotions are without reacting on them. All of this is dependent on the intensity, the duration, the situation, the trigger. So each situation is going to vary, which is why I say how someone responds is going to be very fluid depending upon their past experiences and their trauma, because they might not have the distress tolerance skills, which is being able to manage those emotions to not react impulsively. Some of this is on a conscious level and some of it isn't. The first thing you really want to learn is how to identify your emotions. A lot of people, like I've said previously, don't even know how to properly identify their emotions. Most people, again, only know happy, sad, angry, upset, disappointed, can only maybe name 7 to 10 descriptive words about their emotions when there's probably over 7,000 emotions. You can be very distraught. You can be disappointed, excited, apathy, anhedonia, dysthymia, melancholy, disinterest, confused. There's so many feelings that we experience on a day-to-day basis that we trivialize down to very simple terms, when our emotions sometimes can be very complex and complicated. I always talk about not only being able to identify your emotions, but sitting with them to understand where they come from. Again, this is why I say feelings aren't facts, and also being aware of your triggers so you could recognize when you're having the issue and not that person. A lot of people project their emotions onto people, and we do the same as human beings as well. So being able to sit with those emotions and observe them, acknowledge them, find the truth in them, and also accept them for what they are. Because a lot of the times we want to figure out the why of emotions, and sometimes there is no why. Sometimes you're sad and it just is. And you spend way more time trying to analyze the emotion than trying to figure out how to get out of that emotion. That doesn't mean that you're invalidating your emotions. You're choosing not to sit in that emotion in a self-deprecating way where you're not making any progress as an individual. A lot of those self-deprecating conversations that we have with ourselves prevent us from making further progress and advances and taking risk and doing things that we desire to do, because again, we have that self-doubt, that criticism, and a lot of those negative thinking patterns that we have not learned to reconstruct. So a lot of the reason that I talk about shame and judgment is because we judge and shame ourselves. And again, it does us no benefit. If you can observe your emotions for what they are without judgment and shame, you are more likely to make the change and progress that you are wanting to see. Again, we all make mistakes. We're all human. We're all going to fuck up. And so where do you see yourself making that mistake? Where do you see yourself taking accountability for that mistake? And where do you see yourself changing the behavior? Those are really the kind of steps you should make in making those mistakes, because they're going to happen. So if you can acknowledge and accept your emotions, accept your flaws, accept your deficits and whatever they are, you're able to actually improve them instead of judging them and shaming them. And then it becomes more of a self-fulfilling prophecy than it does progress. Being able to observe your emotions in a very non-judgmental way also helps decrease the intensity of the emotion. You're not giving strength or power to that emotion. You're being able to acknowledge it as an outside perspective instead of internalizing as this is your personality, this is who you are. This is more so, this is my depression, right? I know I have depression, but that is not who I am. I can acknowledge and observe those emotions and let them wave on by like a cloud, and I can feel my emotions, and if something particularly triggers me, I can acknowledge that and sit with that. But it doesn't mean that that's my entire personality, and I'm not allowed to continue to move on through life to make progress to cope with that depression. As much as we want to destigmatize mental health, but also normalize it, while also not overgeneralize people and not overdiagnose, there are clinical indications in your brain that you have some of these mental illnesses. And so there are some mental health professionals online that are very much trivializing mental health for some populations. But there is a huge population that are chemically imbalanced, and so I want to acknowledge that community, that is who I am speaking to. So when you can acknowledge, you can observe your emotions without that judgment, without that shame, then you can go ahead and have more behavioral control over how you react to those emotions. Again, when you don't have the ability to manage your emotions, you're more likely to act impulsively instead of sitting with your thoughts. And I know for some people, they want to answer right now, they want a response right now, they want to talk things out right now. And for people that need that time to regulate their emotions, you really should give them that time to self-regulate and actually observe, to have a very conscious, considerable conversation where they can acknowledge their own faults as well. When you pressure people who are already feeling intense emotion, 9 times out of 10, they're not listening to anything that you're saying. They're listening to respond, they're listening to react, they're listening to defend, or they're listening to control. There is peace in silence, and for some situations, they do need to be resolved, but there's this sense of fake urgency, false urgency, that everything has to be resolved right now, when our emotions are more complicated than that because of how much we are internalizing other people's emotions, how much we're overstimulated, how much some people don't even have the ability to sit with themselves. I talked about a lot of my clients about this. A lot of them are women, mothers. I have had clients who have yet to have a moment to themselves since their children were born. And they're probably 7, 8 years old. And I'm talking about alone time to even take a bath. They have not spent a day without their child. So imagine not even being able to self-regulate, sit down with yourself, take a deep breath, not have that constant emotional attachment to someone else. And that is the truth for a lot of women. That's the truth for a lot of people, where their lives are so much surrounded by other people that, one, they don't know how to sit with themselves, they don't know how to be by themselves, and they don't know how to self-regulate. If all you know how to do is co-regulate, you are creating relationships off codependency. So what does emotional regulation even look like? There are several processes that can help you self-regulate your emotions. And for me, I know I do a lot of mindfulness, which is why you see me meditate and do the sound bath Sundays. I do meditation and sound bath even without Sunday, right? I do that for my own leisure, but I do that to share with the community. But it's something that I personally use so I can sit back and reflect on my emotions, reflect on my feelings, reflect on my week, and come to a very conscious, rational, logical, wise mind. Again, I'm using a lot of DBT terms, dialectical behavioral therapy. And it's interesting enough that Western psychology has adapted DBT, which is a Western psychology, was taken from Eastern holistic wellness practices, such as mindful, such as meditation, such as breath work. And so it's ironic that these concepts are considered demonic or religious or witchcraft when it's widely accepted in the mental health field as being effective, as supported by research. And so us meditators might seem like these woo-woo princesses, but science has shown that a good way to regulate your emotion is to be able to sit with yourself and be able to self-reflect and meditate, and doing the breath work and doing yoga, even Reiki. Reiki is a practice that allows a lot of emotional regulation, self-acceptance, and even connection. So that is why I talk about a lot of these practices and perform a lot of these practices on my channel and on my page to share with the community, because I want you to know that there are more than one ways to cope. And I know that A lot of people have struggled with meditation and mindfulness. A lot of people tell me, I don't know how to meditate. I do it wrong. I'm thinking too much. And honestly, there's no such thing. And this is how I learned that meditative practices can still be very fluid, right? Think about if you're a girl that does your makeup and you may or may not have music on, but you're sitting in silence and you're doing your makeup and you are just in a trance. You're doing something creative. You're doing something artistic, but you're focused. That is meditation. When you're driving and you don't even recall how you got to your next destination because you were so entranced in your thoughts. You got there safely, but you were very focused on whatever you were thinking about that you didn't even really pay much attention to the road. Now, yes, there are some people that might be a little dissociative and there is a difference, but dissociation is more of a traumatic response. So I want to talk to my community and let them know you are not doing meditation wrong. You are just being impatient with yourself. You are judging yourself. You are shaming yourself. And again, it's how do you turn something that is supposed to be non-judgmental, not shame-filled, and just being with yourself into something where you analyze and criticize yourself. So let's try this again. It really is just sitting with yourself, feeling relaxed, feeling focused. You observe your thoughts. You don't judge them. They may come, they may go. You refocus on your breath. And that is the starting and end point is breath. Start with your breath. Your thoughts can go all over, but come back to your breath. Right? That's all meditation is I'm going to observe, I'm going to acknowledge, I'm going to accept. I'm probably even going to problem solve in that time. I'm going to come to conclusions. I'm going to have aha moments. I'm probably going to have creative ideas. I'm probably going to break down and have moments of tears or joy or gratitude. And then I'm going to come back to my breath. And that is simply what meditation is. And it doesn't have to be this, if you can pray, you can meditate. And it's honestly the same thing, except one, you're asking this being of something or expressing gratitude or having this conversation or communication. This is one with yourself. You are godlike. You are a reflection of whatever God being that you believe. So if you can have a conversation with that higher power, you can have a conversation with yourself. And that is what meditation and mindfulness is. Mindfulness is being present in the moment. Again, very non-judgmentally. Being very conscious of what's happening in this moment. The sight, smell, touch, taste, what you hear, that is being in the present moment. Because a lot of us, like I said, the thoughts go, you just bring it right back to your breath. And those moments that we're able to take to help regulate our emotions and develop these skills help us interact and be better members in community. Because again, we're helping to regulate ourselves so that we're not reacting negatively, we're not projecting our emotions, we're not trying to control or manipulate situations, we're allowing ourselves to be, we're allowing other people to be, and then we can move forward in our community and our relationships. And so these are skills that, yes, you can go to therapy and you can and have support and learning and developing these skills on a more close one-to-one basis. But if you want to start a daily practice that you would do in addition to therapy, you are more than welcome to join me in my meditations and my sound bath, and even ask me more information about what this all means. So you talk about emotional regulation, but you also talk about capitalism and white supremacy. Where are you going with all of this? Like, how does that even connect? I talk about these things in our community because these are innate practices that our Black and brown people have been doing for centuries and has been so back to you as a form of self-care because of white supremacy and capitalism. They told you it was witchcraft. They told you it was demonic. They told you that spiritualism was antichrist and woo-woo this and woo-woo that, and praying to their ancestors was wrong, and having symbolic things like crystals and sage and all these things were supposed to be negative. But you can hold this cross, you can drink this cranberry juice, you can eat this cracker, you can do this is fine, but don't do that, that's witchcraft. And our culture has adopted Christianity so much that we have believed these things too. And believe this omniscient being is going to solve all of our problems versus learning how to self-heal, self-regulate, and acknowledge what's going on and adapt and control our own emotions in such a way that we can make progress as a person and as a community. Because I believe spiritualism is a very deeply connected thing for a lot of people, whether they try to whitewash spirituality and make it religious and put a white messiah on it or not, people were going to get drawn back to spirituality. People were going to get drawn back to their ancestors and the connectivity of their ancestral beliefs. And there was going to be some spiritual divide within our community, right? But as long as we can get a good majority to follow what we feel like what is right, which is capitalism, Christianity, white supremacy, if we can get the majority to believe that white is right, and spiritualism and witchcraft and all this occultism, hoodoo, voodoo, all that stuff is wrong, innately wrong, then we can distract people long enough where they don't want to sit and meditate. They'll rather be stimulated by online content, believe in something outside themselves. They will chase something outside themselves. If we can get them to believe something outside themselves, they will continue to chase something outside themselves. Instead of finding your own connection to spirituality, your own connection to a higher power, and your own connection to self to do your own self-healing. And it's not to say that people don't need support, therapy, clinical interventions, psychiatric interventions. I believe there is a range of what this looks like. But as a whole, generally, people who are experiencing a lot of heightened emotion during this time post-COVID don't know how to regulate and don't know how to manage and navigate those emotions outside of this spiritual being, and feel helpless and powerless. And that's where we see, again, we see everything that's going on in the world, and we can send our prayers, but everybody's going to sit here and wait for something outside themselves to come save the day. We're waiting something outside our being to come and recognize and rectify everything that's going on in the world, not acknowledging the power we have in ourselves. And so I know for me that my mission is to empower people to see their own self-actualization, to feel empowered to make the changes they want to see within this community. And again, like I said, I can't go and change policy, and I'm not on the front line trying to picket or protest, but I'm going to help my community come to a space of emotional healing where they're not beating up on their wives, they're not cussing out their kids, they're not abusing people within their lives and their community like this generational curse and cycle has been doing within our generation and our families, right? A lot of statistics are saying 50% of children have experienced at least one traumatic event. Think of your children. I don't have any kids. That disturbs me. And so that's why when I see a lot of clients and I'm listening to their stories, of course, where does it start with? With the parent, with the family. And so that's where my mission is to bring healing to communities and to the family, so that we don't see mass destruction. We don't see increased crime. We don't see mass shootings. We don't see mass violence and abuse and assault. Right? And so my goal is not to go and change policy and change the world, but I do want to change my community, and I want to break those generational curses. I want to create that ancestral healing. I want us to acknowledge that oppression that has kept us from thinking that we don't have the power to change our own lives, that we don't have the power to change our circumstance, change our opinion, change the lives around us. Again, oppression has taught us learned helplessness and to sit quiet. And the system of oppression has taught us to sit here and take it, bitch amongst each other, blame each other, be anxious and angry and irritable with each other, fight with each other, and then we're still in the same loop while the system is still doing the same dance with a different face every 4 years. That's what it's taught us. And we're still on this hamster wheel. And I want us to come out this hamster wheel and build community that doesn't rely on a system that continues to have us run on this wheel. And again, I know I'm one of those people that's kind of confusing, because I can tell you you ain't shit, but I'll still come to your birthday party. I'll still wish you congratulations. I don't need to look at you with judgment to love you or to be there for you or support you. But a lot of people struggle with, no, I ain't doing that. Nope, they ain't doing it for me, so I ain't doing it for them. And blah, blah, blah. Like, it's a lot of adversarial, negative, pessimistic, untrustworthy communication and interpersonal relationships growing within our community, and that shit needs to stop. Like, we got to figure this shit out, because we need to depend on each other more and lean on each other more than judging and criticizing and critiquing. It's not helpful. So yes, I want you to feel empowered. Yes, I want you to sit with yourself and meditate with me and reflect and become creative and imaginative, and I want you to find the strength and courage in your voice. I want you to discover your identity. I want you to lean into it. I want to support you in all of that. And being able to sit with yourself and be mindful and have that self-regulation and have those moments of mindfulness really help you get to that self-empowerment of your opinion matters more than anybody else's. And that's all that matters, is how you feel about yourself. Because when you truly, and I'm not talking in a narcissistic, egocentric way, when you truly accept and love yourself, you can see the love in other people. You can see that love in other people, and you can accept them and embrace them and hold them accountable and encourage them and love them all the same. But you don't have to react negatively. You don't have to judge them. You don't have to shame them. You don't have to contribute to the chaos, because there's enough of it. And you can do your own thing. Why I do the sound bath, why I do breath work, why I do yoga, why I work out, right? Because a lot of trauma is stored in the body. So I take fitness and health seriously now, because I know that trauma is stored in the body, and I want to move all of those emotions out of me, right? I want to be able to feel joy and feel those good hormones released in my body. And so because I know I have a chemical imbalance, I have to do extra more work to make sure that I keep myself happy. And a lot of people have to do that, and that's the reality for a lot of people. Because again, a lot of us have experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of vicarious trauma, a lot of overstimulation. Again, the world is on fire, and we could observe it all. And we have a lot of empathy and compassion for people. So we need those moments. We need to take those breaths. We need to take those moments of silence. We need to step away. We need to disconnect from the internet. And we really need to sit with ourselves more. So again, these are practices that I want to educate our community about. And again, if you have more questions or want to learn more, definitely hit me up. I appreciate you being here with me, Healing Fam. You can join me here every week. And again, my sound baths are every Sunday, 8 p.m. live on YouTube, and I'm doing Instagram as well. Make sure to follow at Healing Crown Counseling, Healing Crown Wellness. Appreciate you again for being here.